So, college football has a new problem. Players aren't leaving, they're actually fighting for sixth, seventh, and eighth years of eligibility. Lots of people go to college for 6 or 7 years. They're called doctors. This is the Nitro College Football Show. We have players suing for extra eligibility. We've got Georgia making some waves in the offseason. And special feature tonight, we're going to dive into, is Alabama just good now? I'm Burl.
I'm straight.
Like, subscribe, comment below if you love college football. So let's talk a little bit about some of the big news for the past, I guess, few weeks, really, right? You have Joey Aguilar, Trinidad Chambliss, all suing the NCAA for additional eligibility to give them sixth and seventh years, and they're not the only ones. Like we're seeing all kinds of players across the league, across the country, and a lot of this stuff just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
because on one hand, you have the kid down in Miami who is in his eighth year, right?
Yeah,
and they're okay with that, but they're not okay with Trinidad Chambliss having a sixth year.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
Yeah. So as the amount of money that's available to these college athletes continues to rise, you're seeing more and more players understand that, hey, you know what? I can make more money in college and have a lot easier life than I would as a pro sports player, as a rookie, where I could get cut or get hurt my first year out. They're seeing it's greener pastures to stay in college. And that's crazy to say, because it was always about, especially in football, getting to the NFL as quickly as possible so you can get to that second contract where you really make money. But when you've got guys getting guaranteed contracts for $1 million plus dollars, when your average rookie contract in the NFL is what? Is it like $800,000? Yes, you get some bonuses on top of that. Guys are going for it, and they're going for the opportunity to play in experienced places where they want to play, because they can transfer around and find the best deal, get as much money now. So that's what guys are doing. And, look no further than the situation at the University of Alabama with Charles Bediako, a player who played in the G League, essentially in a pro league, and then returned and fought and got a court injunction and played a couple of games at Alabama this year. Now, I think finally the NCAA has put their foot down and they've ruled him out for the rest of the year. But I think this is just the start of this. You might see more of it. How long before we see a guy who, tries to go to the pros, goes undrafted, maybe plays not in the NFL, but maybe in the UFL or whatever, and then they want to come back to school?
Yeah, I think there was a kid who actually played in an NBA game and is trying to come back.
Jeez, that's crazy. Hey, your mic is still a little quiet. You can turn it up.
I probably just need to have it closer.
So yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think. And so, like, the two highest profile cases, and actually, I mean, technically there's still a third going on. The Diego Pavia situation is still kind of going on, and there's been a lot of athletes that have latched onto that because of the implications for JUCO years. And I think Aguilar is kind of an extension of that. But like I said, there's two high profile cases right now that are pending court hearings later this week. And that's Joey Aguilar at Tennessee and Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. Now, both of these guys, it's a little bit different situation for both of these players. Chambliss is trying to argue that one of his years at Tarleton State, his second year there, was a redshirt year, that he had respiratory issues and that he didn't play. Even though he was there on the sidelines all the time at all their games, he wasn't really around the team, and he was taking that as a medical redshirt. During the 2022 season, he redshirted his first year at school there in 2021. So his initial waiver to the NCAA was denied on January 9th. And then just last week, the appeal that he filed was also rejected. So now, and this is what a lot of these guys are doing, when the NCAA is telling them no, they are filing local restraining orders, basically, in friendly districts to try to, yeah. So now he's got a hearing on the 16th in Mississippi courts. And the key piece of evidence that his camp is trying to say is there's a video from the D2 National Championship game in 2024, and the announcers mention that Trinidad Chambliss during the 2022 season had taken a red shirt for health issues. So the fact that that call was made, like pointing it out in some broadcast, they're trying to use that as evidence that, oh, he did take a red shirt. He should be eligible.
Yeah, the Chambliss one, I can kind of understand, and I kind of feel for the kid, but at the same time, I'm still tired of seeing these players just hang around long after eligibility should be up.
Right. Well, especially in his case, like there's no way, I don't see any way that Trinidad Chambliss comes back, and even if he has another amazing year, how his stock for the NFL is going to be higher than it is right now. He's not getting taller, and he just came off this string of games where he played out of his freaking mind, beat Georgia, almost won their next playoff game, playing fantastic. Like, I don't know. Unless it's just that there's so much money being offered him to stay that he knows that, like I said, he's not going to get any bigger. So maybe his NFL prospects are not as high for long term as some other guys.
Yeah, I mean, from what I saw at the end of the season, I mean, really all season, he played amazing. I would love for him to be on my team if I'm an NFL franchise.
Right.
I mean, the dude's a gamer. He can run, he can throw, he can do all the things. He has great escapability, as we saw in the Georgia game. So in today's NFL, I mean, that's exactly what you want out of your quarterback. Just think right. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. I mean,
yeah,
that's what they do. Now, Joey Aguilar, on the other hand, I think he's trying to get a 7th year, right?
No, he's trying to get an 8th year.
An 8th year. Okay.
Yeah. Listen, this is his timeline. So his timeline's real interesting. So his first 2 years, he was at the City of College of San Francisco. So the first year was 2019. He redshirted, took a true red shirt that year. 2020 COVID didn't count for anybody. After that, he transferred to Diablo Valley College, where he was there for 2 more years. So that's years 3 and 4. Then he transferred to Appalachian State, where he was the starting quarterback for 2 years. And then last year 7 at Tennessee. So he is trying to get an 8th year of eligibility to say that all of those years that he spent at JUCO, 4 years, should not be eligible toward his eligibility, even though he's been a starting quarterback at Appalachian State and then Tennessee for the last 3 years. This dude started 38 games. Is that not enough?
It's not enough, man. He got to have more. I mean, in his defense, if I'm in his position, I'm trying to come back because I know I'm going to make a crap ton of money playing for Tennessee. And I'm not getting
He's got that Nico money, man.
He's like, yeah. He's like, he's not getting drafted. If he does, I'll be absolutely shocked. So from a business standpoint and a life standpoint, yeah, he absolutely would want to come back to college. But it's not the right thing for college football.
Yeah. So, he's got a similar situation. He's got a local hearing up there in Tennessee. His hearing is on Friday, the 13th. So we'll see.
Ooh, that doesn't look good for him.
Yeah. I mean, but once again,
Friday the 13th.
Yeah. But once again, there's no enforcement by the NCAA. So if they can convince these local judges to give them, TROs or whatever.
Yeah.
They're going to end up playing.
Hopefully the judges that they get are unbiased, unlike the Alabama judge in the G League.
In the Bediako case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. It's all stupid. And like I said, the NCAA is not following any set of rules at this point. They are basically picking and choosing who they want or think should have an extra year or not. And it makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
Absolutely no sense.
Because there's the case of, I can't remember what school it's at, but there's a guy who played like a couple of games on the lacrosse team one year. And now he's trying to get just a 4th year of eligibility to play football. And they're telling him no because his lacrosse year counted. I mean, once again, a lot of this would get solved if they would go back to the single transfers, and in that way you wouldn't have kids crossing over years at different places all the time and all that jazz. But it's a mess.
Yeah.
Like we continue to say, there are no rules.
There are no rules at all. And it's just going to get crazier and crazier.
Yep.
But that's the way it is. So if you made it this far with us, we appreciate you watching and spending your time with us tonight. Like, subscribe, hit that subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. Really helps us out. We appreciate it. Give us some love. And if you're already subscribed, tell a friend, be a friend, share the joy of the Nitro College Football Show. Okay, so speaking of joy, we'll move on to something a little more fun. So North Dakota State is moving on up to D1.
Yeah, North Dakota State. So the most dominant program, arguably, well, in terms of, since they called it FCS history, but used to be called 1AA. This is a school that has won 10 national championships in the last 15 years. And this is a pretty late decision for them to move up to FBS this year. They are joining the Mountain West Conference as a football-only school. They are paying a $12.5 million entrance fee to join the conference. And they are coming in even though they have a new facility and stuff, they're coming in, even though it is the Mountain West, they're coming in disadvantaged against the other schools there. Their average budget for their football program, I think, is around $7.5 million. While right now in the Mountain West, they average $13.5 million per school. So they are coming in significantly smaller than those schools, but it's an opportunity for them. So the Mountain West Conference has lost its two most prominent teams in Boise State and Fresno State, who are moving on to the reconstituted Pac-12. So there's an opportunity. The Mountain West needs schools, and North Dakota State sees this as a chance. Hey, we can come into a conference that doesn't have a dominant program and maybe compete day one.
I'm here for it. I would love to see North Dakota State in the playoff, and I hope they win their petition to bypass that stupid rule. I don't know where this rule came from and what it serves, what purpose it serves. It makes no sense to me. Yeah,
so let's talk a little bit about it. So the rule had been in place that when you moved up, which is stupid, you're moving up. But when you move up, you have to acclimate to the new level. So you are ineligible for postseason play. That includes conference championships, bowl games, playoffs for 2 years. And we've seen some schools that have moved up in their first year not being able to do that, but find success pretty quick. One being James Madison, who just moved up from FCS a few years ago. And by God, they were already in the playoff this year. So like I said, that the old law that was in place, it was really, the argument against it is that it was crafted before the idea of the transfer portal really allowed programs to beef up their rosters pretty quick. It was designed because a school moving up, when you moved up from the FCS to the FBS level, you were changing the number of scholarships and things like that. But now, because you can use the transfer portal, you can really upgrade your roster quickly and make yourself competitive quicker.
So the more you explain it, the more this rule makes absolutely zero freaking sense.
Right.
Okay.
It doesn't.
If you're moving up from FCS to FBS, you're already at a disadvantage because the guys that are on your team right now were not recruited to be at that level.
For the most part.
So let's just assume that, right? And then to your point, like, all right, now they get different scholarship limits. So now they have to deal with that. So right off the jump, these teams do not have the same level footing as any other team in D1 FBS. I still like calling it D1. It just makes more sense to me. So I just don't understand why this rule is in place. Like, how does that help you get acclimated? Because if you do come in with all these disadvantages, and you earn a shot at the postseason or earn a shot at the playoffs, well, damn, you should be in the playoff.
Especially now. Especially now.
Yeah. Especially now. Absolutely. I mean,
like I said, their argument is a good argument. And it's a reason that the Mountain West Conference plans to support them in it, because as teams continue to change conferences, your smaller conferences, your Mountain West, they're going to want to try to get up programs to fill in as best they can. So if they need to add somebody in the future from the FBS ranks or from the FCS ranks, they for damn sure want them to get the best they can and have them have at least glimmer of hope of them coming in and competing, So as a North Dakota State here, you're like, well, I've dominated the FCS. I've got a conference that's weakened, and I can come in and I can fill in players in the transfer portal and make myself strong in a year or two. Why not? And North Dakota State, over the last few years, they are 9-5 in their last 14 games against FBS programs.
Not bad.
And it's not bad at all. So this will be one to watch, because I don't know about this year, because the transfer portal period's kind of over. So I don't know how much they can really bolster up that roster this year. But next year, who knows?
I mean, they've won 10 of the last 15 national championships at that level. So, I mean, you can't just sleep on them.
No.
So I'm excited about it. I hope they win their little battle to overturn that rule, at least for them. Whether or not they make it, yet to be determined, but I would love to see them in the hunt at the end of the season. I just think that would be a really cool story.
I do too.
So if you're still with us, like, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and let's talk about them Georgia Bulldogs. So some news, there's a new collective in town. So now if you want to subscribe essentially to Georgia football,
you can. Yeah.
You can.
So last week they announced the new collective. It's called Glory Glory. And it's an interesting case, right? Because Georgia, when all of the revenue sharing stuff passed last year, Georgia shut down its collective that was in place. It was called the Classic City Collective. Georgia thought that everything was going to go through kind of the university going forward, the revenue sharing and everything. And so they shut the collective down that they built in Athens.
Georgia thought people would actually follow the rules that they agreed upon. Right.
They really did. And what they're finding out is that nobody's paying attention to the rules, that collectives are just as powerful as they are. And Georgia kind of suffered for that a little bit. Georgia's had a little bit of harder time on some of the transfer portal guys and some high profile recruits that they may have gotten in the past. And I think part of it was because they didn't know exactly where the money was. When they shut down the collective, it was in the university's hands, but what can they actually do at the university level? They kind of, and Georgia, Jerry Moorhead has been at one of the forefronts of supporting doing things the right way. He's been one of the spokesmen. So I think they were kind of in a lost place. So reconstituting this collective is an effort to get their tails in gear, because some people, and I know as Georgia fans, we've kind of felt a little bit that they've kind of fallen behind a little bit on that spending. And so maybe it's time to, get it in gear.
I mean, you look at the top recruits that Georgia, or I guess the pattern that you see, right? Like these top tier, number one at their position, 5-star recruits committed to Georgia, long-term commitments, multiple commitments to Georgia. And then what happens? Right at the end, Texas comes in, just outspends. Miami comes in, outspends. Vanderbilt.
Right.
But also playing time. That was kind of a little different, but still same type of pattern.
Right.
And so to your point, like that makes a lot of sense why Georgia would have been scrambling for money at those points, because there was no collective. There was no extra NIL.
Right. And like I said, I think it's just them understanding that, hey, we've got to keep kind of a third party group that's going to handle this, because we thought we could handle it all in house. If everything was going through the rules, it's better in the hands of the university to run it. But they thought that everybody else was going to follow suit, that across the country, people were going to shut down their collectives, run it through the university. Now they knew that some are going to spend more, but that's not the case at all. These big collectives at some of these big schools with huge donors have stayed separate and are continuing to fund programs. And if the NCAA isn't going to fight it and enforce the rules, because remember, last summer, the CSC initially announced that payments through collectives that weren't for valid NIL purposes were not going to be eligible. And then there was like that court for like 2 weeks. People were like, and then they switched it. So it's just a change in direction, but it's good. If you're a Georgia fan, it's showing that the commitment is still there, that, this might have been an anomaly, and maybe we are going to pony up some money in the cases where it felt like we might not have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really hoping that we do see a change and start landing some of these top guys. I don't know. As a fan, it just feels better when you hear your team landed a top guy.
Yeah. So as part of this launching of this new collective, they had a pretty lengthy interview with Kirby Smart, where he talked about some of this stuff. And you haven't seen Kirby talk much about it since the season ended, but there were some things I thought that was really interesting in that interview. Transcripts come from Dog Nation, but this was the telling right at the beginning. How did he describe the end of the 2025 season? Utter effing chaos. He dropped that right at the beginning. He said, it's been wild to say the least. So the portal's going on when the season ended, and probably the hardest part is managing our roster. We took days, weeks to get it fixed. So since the game, we had a goal of keeping the players on a roster that we could. We went through agents, players, meetings to retain our roster, which is, I think, a battle that we won. So Kirby said it right there. It was chaos, and their goal was to keep the players on the roster. Georgia only had 13 guys transfer out. Their goal was not to go out and get a bunch of players out of the portal. They were trying to keep the guys they had.
Right, which makes a lot of sense, because you look at the team last year, very young team, the youngest team in a long time at Georgia, but very talented. A lot of 5-star, 4-star players, freshmen starting, making huge impacts on the line, on the offensive line, defensive line, secondary, really all over the field. So you spent your time and effort developing these players to play in your system. You don't want to lose that, because that's an investment that you made.
Yeah.
And working to just retain your talent is really the best strategy that Georgia's going to have, because Georgia's going to recruit really well no matter what. Because there was an ACC person anonymously said the only way to beat Georgia on the recruiting trail is to outspend them,
to overpay them.
Yeah, like overpay.
Yeah,
and
because there was that thing that came out, and they were talking about, they collected information, and they're talking about who spends the most and which schools were the wisest with their money. And Georgia was listed as one of those schools that spent their money wisely. I also this was another quote that Kirby had in here about what their message was to the kids they were trying to retain. He said, "We reiterated to them that we wanted them here because I think a lot of portal kids is to get enamored with what's out there. They constantly look at their phones. They go down their feeds, and all they see is other people jumping ship, going other places. It's the whole grass is greener. Is the grass greener or not? We think the grass is pretty damn green where we are." I really like that message, because in this new world of NIL, Georgia is one of the programs that's continuing to push developing guys. And if you're going to continue to say, hey, we want you to come here and develop you, we really want guys that want to be here, that want to stay. That's what their message is pushing. So, we'll see where they go. He talked about some of the portal additions that they really liked. He talked about Amarius Williams, really liked what they got out of him from Auburn. They talked about Isaiah Canyon and how they recruited him in high school and they really wanted to get him, but he went to Georgia Tech and Kirby gave him credit. He said he got better. He got better than what we saw him out of high school. And so that's why he's here. So Georgia, at least as a program, feels good.
I love that. I mean, I absolutely love it. And I think what Georgia did in the portal this time is probably the best all around portal grab that they got. Last year was great, filling some gaps on the receiver, but getting a DN pass, legit pass rusher, that's huge to pair with an already really good defensive line, and to get a potential number one receiver out.
Yeah, I got to take over for Colby Young there because we don't really have a big body like that on campus right now. Canyon's a good fit. Yeah, right. But just, as we said, all of this effort by Georgia is to continue to push retaining of talent and growing talent. And with it, some people were down on Georgia a little bit, and they were down on Georgia's recruiting class last year. Georgia was number 6 in the country, which for most people, that's great. But when you're used to finishing between 1 and 3 every year, finishing 6, losing a couple of recruits right at the end, they lost Curtis right there during the week of signing day. They lost Marchese. They lost him on signing day to Michigan. So you lost a couple of guys and 2 guys that had been committed for a while. But
don't forget Jackson Cantwell.
Well, he was never committed, but they just got outbid for him. Right. Other guys too. But what you've seen here is Georgia's got a little juice going on recruiting right now. Last week they got a commitment from Keeman Spell, number 1 running back in the class of 2027 from Pennsylvania, thought to be a heavy lean to Penn State. He comes down on a visit to Georgia.
I think he was originally committed to Penn State before Franklin got fired.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Georgia's looking really strong and we always look strong for tight ends, but the number 2 tight end in the 2027 class, Brock Williams, looking really good for him. They've got a commitment
from name.
For a tight end at Georgia, hell yeah. They've already got commitments for the number 7 offensive tackle in the country, Kelsey Adams. They're looking really strong with the number 8 offensive tackle, Joshua Sam Appel, who is a big freaking dude. They got a commit from Dante Wright, number 5 cornerback in the country. They're in on a lot of other guys. They are making moves, and if this keeps up, and the difference is, I think in this class you're starting to see is they're hitting on guys or getting close on guys on the offensive side of the ball. We're used to seeing big-time defensive recruits, and, we get some good offensive guys here or there, but they're after some big targets on the offense. So a lot of momentum in the Georgia recruiting department right now.
Man, got to give some praise to Georgia for what they're doing on the offensive line. I mean, you look at what they did last year. You had 3 freshmen playing on the offensive line, 4 at the end of the year, right? And now you're just adding depth with huge talent guys coming in. I mean,
yeah, you're probably going to see a true freshman start on the line next year too. Ogboko is probably going to be in there at one of your tackles, and then you've got Glover obviously, and you've got Juan Gaston. So they both played as true freshmen last year. So Georgia's young offensive line is going to be really, really good and really, really big next fall.
Yeah, and I'm sure Tolliver will get into the rotation, give Bobo some breaks.
Yeah. Oh, and Erskine's back. So you've got a senior stalwart. You've got Bobo, who played out of his mind, most of the year up until the end until he got hurt, obviously. Glover, freshman All-American. Gaston should have been a freshman All-American. I don't know why he wasn't. Yeah. And then, like I said, then you just got to find a tackle, and you've got this huge Ogboko 5-star guy coming in. Things are looking good.
Yeah. So I got 2 questions for you.
All right.
So on that topic of Gaston, not getting, freshman awards, do you think it could be that it's because there's this notion that Georgia is down because Georgia's not winning national championships?
I don't know. It is interesting to watch all these, they're talking about preseason expectations for next year. And, Georgia was number 2 going into the playoffs, looked really strong, and played a good game against Ole Miss, and they lost a team that they'd already beaten. Georgia didn't lose to a team that they didn't beat last year. And it's interesting, and they didn't win a national championship. But they've had buys both years, and people are like, oh, they haven't won a playoff game in a couple of years. Well, they had buys. They won SEC championships both years. And, so is Georgia down when they had the youngest roster in the country and they just retained it all? I don't know, but it seems like the national confidence is shaking a little bit. So, hey, get the attention off us. Push all that expectation onto Texas.
Hey,
push all that expectation onto A&M and in Oklahoma. Let them have it.
I love that the rest of the nation thinks that Georgia is down. Let them keep pushing that narrative. Kirby's just going to use that as fuel to the fire. And
Absolutely.
It will work. It will absolutely work. Okay, second question. What do you think of the logo for the new collective?
It's pretty cool. It's a mix of the old school, and it's not Nike-fied, and I like it. I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I got to get a hat.
I think you get one if you join the collective. I think for your $20 a month, I think you get some stuff. So
yeah, maybe I can make it a business expense.
Always looking for tax write-offs.
Always. To beat the man, you got to beat the man. All right. So if you're a dog fan like us, hit that like button, tell your friends, hit that subscribe button, chat us up in the comments. Let us know what you think. Where's Georgia going? What do you think about Georgia's recruiting this off season and how we're looking going into the season? Okay. So for tonight's feature, we are going to discuss a little bit of history, of Alabama and determine, is Alabama just good now instead of being the great dominant national championship dynasty that we're used to seeing?
And before anybody gets all up in arms, let me state for the record. I know. Let me state for the record. Being good is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. Being good is a good thing. But over the last 20 years, if you were to look at all the teams in college football and you were to do, let's say, a tier ranking, since we like to do rankings and lists, you would have a bunch of teams that would fit in that S tier category, right? Probably Georgia would be in there, and Ohio State, and Oregon. These teams that have been at the top, won a national championship, or maybe, got real close. Clemson won a few national championships. But then there would be a tier above S tier. All by themselves, it would be Alabama. And whether you are an Alabama fan or an Auburn fan who hates them, you can't deny what Alabama really did for most of the last 20 years, primarily under Nick Saban. Historically, Alabama is one of the, winningest programs in college football history. They've won the most national championships. They've got 985 all-time official wins, third on the list, 18 claimed national championships. They've got the two most arguably famous coaches in college football history, in Bear Bryant and Nick Saban. And here in the 21st century, they really, really have dominated the narrative, right? Since the hiring of Nick Saban in 2007. Once Nick Saban came to Tuscaloosa, they won 6 national championships. They won 9 SEC championships. They had 4 Heisman Trophy winners, and they went 206-29 overall. You can't deny the success that Alabama had. But then something changed.
Yep. Then all hell broke loose. Hell froze over, and Nick Saban, pretty much out of nowhere, retires on January 10th, 2024. Nick Saban announced his retirement, basically saying that this new world of NIL and transfer portal, he's out. He had a player that he really wanted, come in, and the first thing that they said was, "How much are you going to pay me?" And he looked at Miss Terry, and Miss Terry said, "All right, we're done." But yeah, so that's a big reason. Plus, Nick Saban's getting up in age, 72 years old. And for the first time in his tenure at that point, Saban had gone 3 years without a national championship. So they were in a good groove of like pretty much every other year winning a national championship. At least it felt like that, right? So Nick Saban retires. Kalen DeBoer comes in from Washington after competing for a national title, which is a great story. And following that retirement, when Kalen DeBoer coming in, you had 30 players enter the transfer portal. Most notably, Caleb Downs, who goes on to have 2 All-American years at Ohio State and wins a national championship and almost won a second, and will probably be top 10 pick in the draft. Maybe even higher. I mean, he's that good. But Kalen DeBoer is crazy as everything has sounded. He's still been doing pretty well. He has wins over Georgia the past 2 years, and he's doing great on the recruiting trail. They brought in the number 2 recruiting class in the country, which included the then 17-year-old Ryan Williams. And also around that time, Alabama had 9 players drafted into the draft, including 3 first-rounders. So Nick Saban retiring was quite the seismic shift in college football.
Yeah. So then the 2024 season came, DeBoer's first season down there at Tuscaloosa, and the expectations were still high for Alabama. They were the number 3 preseason team, and they climbed to number 1 early in the season after they defeated in Georgia in one of the most exciting games of the year. It was, a crazy game. They went up huge. Georgia stormed back, took the lead, and they got the win on the end. Huge touchdown by this rising star in Ryan Williams. And, for a lot of people, it was, well, there's Alabama continuing its dominance over Georgia that they had under Nick Saban. But then the rest of the season kind of went a little bit awry. They ended up losing 3 games that year in the regular season, including one of the biggest upsets we've seen in a long time when they lost to Vanderbilt. A few weeks later, they also lost to Oklahoma, a team that was playing absolutely horrible at the time. And they ended up missing the playoffs. And for somebody to say that Alabama, who had, won 6 national championships and had all the success in the first year that you have a 12-team expanded playoff, they're not going to be in it. I mean, that was crazy talk, right? Actually, it was Alabama, in the 10 years that they'd had the playoff, a 14 playoff, any type of playoff, it was only the second time that they'd missed the playoffs. So, and that was in the 14 playoff. So, them missing the 12-team playoff was a big deal. And then they had a bowl game against a Michigan team that had not, was defending national champion, but had failed to meet its expectations. And they looked kind of lifeless in that bowl game, and they lost. Alabama finished the season with 4 losses, their most in a season since 2007. And, there started to be some criticisms, and it could have been some growing pains, right? Alabama's this program under Nick Saban that was known as toughness and grit, and they didn't get pushed around. They may have lost a game, but it was because of crazy plays, not because they got beat up on the line of scrimmage, and not because somebody, cut through them, or that guys were arguing or guys were undisciplined. And you started seeing some of those things. They had a captain who got thrown out of a game, and was just stuff that wasn't the same, which you used to seeing at Alabama. But it was DeBoer's first year. And as a guy taking over for a legend, that task was impossible. Unless he won a national championship, there was going to be doubt about whether he was the right guy for the job. So Season's over. We go into the off season. After a year after they had 30 players leave in the transfer portal, 25 players leave in the transfer portal. Now, they did add 12 players from the portal, and that gave them the number 2 ranked portal class. So they brought in some guys. They had 7 guys get drafted again. Great, respectable number. And once again, they hauled in the number 2 recruiting class. Made a couple of changes on their staff. They brought in Ryan Grubb, who had worked with DeBoer at Washington, to kind of revamp the offense. Jalen Milroe had moved on, and now they were heading into the 2025 season, hoping to get back to the playoff.
So that takes us to this past season, the 2025 season. Alabama rolls in preseason number 8, and many people expecting this to be the return to form, return to glory, however you want to phrase it, at least getting into the playoffs under Kalen DeBoer. You have a change in the offense. You got a quarterback who fits the system better. And I mean, everything is lining up exactly how Alabama would want it to be. And what happens? They start the season by getting absolutely manhandled by Florida State, a team that would go on to be one of the worst teams in the country with a handful of wins. And Alabama did not look good in that game. I mean, yes, they lost, but they looked really bad in that loss. So coming out of that game, lots of questions about Alabama. Kalen DeBoer's seat is never hotter. People are ready to fire him yesterday, right? But then next game, Ty Simpson shows up and Alabama goes on an absolute 4-game heater where they beat 4 ranked teams, which includes a game in Athens over Georgia, in a game that was a really close, really exciting game, but they pretty much controlled a lot of it and made the big plays at the end when they needed to. It was a classic Georgia Alabama game, and it was one of the all-time greats there. It sucked for us. So then at that point, people are questioning, okay, Bama looks like they might have bounced back, and question whether or not Kirby Smart could ever get past Bama. So as they move on, we start seeing some flaws kick in. We start seeing some depth not being there. Alabama had 0 run game the whole season. So all of their success was based off of Ty Simpson, who played lights out all year long and ran for his life for a lot of it because of just injuries. Like I said, the depth was fleeting. So Bama rolls in it has a game against Oklahoma. I guess Oklahoma rolls into Alabama because this was a home game for them. And Oklahoma this past year was really good. But at the time, they have a quarterback, John Mateer, who's still recovering from injury. So that offense is still not great. But Oklahoma pulls that game out, and we start seeing more chinks in the armor at Oklahoma. And the next week in the Iron Bowl, they barely squeaked by Auburn and really won based off some gutsy calls on 4th down to get past Auburn.
They went for a touchdown in a tie ball game when they could have kicked a field goal to take a lead, with minutes left in the game. So that just tells you a little bit about how they were feeling, either really, really confident in their offense or not so confident in their defense.
Exactly. So then we roll into the SEC championship game. It's Georgia, Alabama. We think this is going to be another classic, but as it turns out, Alabama was just absolutely beat up after the season that they had, and Georgia smoked them 28-7. Absolutely dominated this game. But somehow Bama still made the playoffs, and they got a rematch against Oklahoma, and they ended up pulling that one out. But then they go on to get absolutely destroyed by Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And all this time, all this is happening. There's talk of Penn State is going to hire Kalen DeBoer, or Kalen DeBoer is going to get fired. I mean, just all this stuff. So Bama season's over, and Ty Simpson, he's headed to the draft. He entertained some offers to come back, but ultimately decided, no, he's going pro. He wants to be able to come back to his college and be respected, which I completely commend him on that. But then Bama also lost 23 players to the portal, including a highly touted running back, Richard Young, and five-star Quay Russell, and receiver Isaiah Horton, who had transferred in last year, and by the end of the season was actually looking like their second best receiver, because Ryan Williams has just dropped off the face of the planet. And then they added 18 players, ended up having the 46th ranked transfer class. The recruiting, the high school recruiting, still going strong. Their number 5 recruiting class, great, good, but they're missing out on those top tier guys, kind of like Georgia is. But still, I mean, they're not going away. Like, they're still going to be in the fight. They're going to be a very talented team. The difference is, though, only 14 of those 25 players were 4 and 5 stars. So good, but not typical Alabama, where you have 5 stars in a recruiting class.
Yeah, used to seeing around 75% blue chip, right?
Yeah. Just stacking them.
Yeah. So where does that leave us with Alabama? So early rankings for next year, we're used to seeing Alabama preseason top 10 type team. I'm seeing 17, 16, 17, 18, somewhere. So preseason next year, people aren't feeling so great about Alabama. They've got, they're still thinking they're going to be competitive, but they've got them down in the teens. So let's sum up kind of where they sit. It's been 5 years since Alabama last won a national championship, which for most programs, okay, great. Hell, Georgia, we went 41 years without winning a national championship. And, we were fine. I'm still a good program, but when you've been at Alabama and you went all those years under Saban where you didn't even go 3 years without winning a national championship, okay, maybe something's changed. You've had 4 losses in 2 consecutive years. I mean, Nick Saban lost 4 games once in 17 years. Recruiting is still great, but it's changed. Like you said, it's not as high as a blue chip ratio. They finished number 5 in recruiting this year. Great, but when was the last time they finished not number 1 or number 2?
I mean, at least top 3. They've always been in the top 3.
They're losing a lot of players in the portal, and they're not bringing them back in at the same rate. I mean, they lost 23 players in their portal class, and they brought in 18, but it was 46th ranked. Like, Georgia only lost 13 players, so their portal class was like 50th or something, but they only lost 13 guys. Alabama lost 23 a year after they lost 25, a year after they lost 30. So you've lost a lot, and we know Alabama recruits well. So these weren't chums. These were 4-star guys, probably mostly. So that's kind of where it leaves us. Alabama is undoubtedly still one of the top programs in the country, but their philosophy and how they're looked at nationally might be changing a little bit, because like some of these other schools in the South, Georgia included, Alabama does not have the financial resources of these oil money schools or these big schools up north. They are a Southern school, a Southern state school. And so the question becomes, for years, Alabama was elite, the most dominating program in the country. But now, is Alabama just good?
I think the answer is yes. And I don't think they're alone in that tier anymore. You know, NIL and transfer portal has leveled the playing field for a lot of teams. I mean, for Indiana to win a national championship, never thought in a million years I would ever utter those words.
Right.
But it happened, and that's the reality.
And what is good, right? You know, I think a good example, if you are a Georgia fan, is Georgia under Mark Richt, right? Georgia was a good program under Mark Richt, but they weren't an elite program. But under Mark Richt, Georgia won SEC titles. Georgia finished number 3 in the country twice, and number 2 once. They almost made it to national championship games. They were considered a top-tier team competing. They were a top 10 recruiting team. They had a good fan base. They were nationally prominent. They got good players. They put guys in the NFL. That's what a good team does. But the difference between a good team and what Alabama was, an elite team, it is a difference. And those programs, and Georgia may be under a very similar situation as Alabama. The only difference is that our great coach is still there. If Kirby Smart decides to move on, if he decides that he's had enough of this junk, he may go to the NFL or hell retire. And Georgia might be faced with a similar situation as Alabama. An amazingly strong program with rich tradition, with national title pedigree, with putting guys in the NFL. But if it's strictly transactional based at the end of the day, not the financial resources that some of these schools have, it may become harder for them to compete at that level.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think Kirby's going anywhere. I think he is in his dream job, and they're going to have to he's going to have to tell him when he doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I agree. I think Alabama is now just good. That's not a bad thing. A good program is going to be able to compete for a national championship, especially in the days of a 12-team playoff and potentially expanding more. We've seen good teams. Hell, what happened in the NFL this year? Were the Patriots a great team? No, but they played in the Super Bowl. They got their tail kicked in the Super Bowl, but they played in it because the cards fell right. Right. Yeah, the cards fell right in the playoff.
When you have a playoff, it's not always the best team that wins, but who is just better on that day.
Right. So Alabama, still top flight program, but are they elite like they once were? Nah, man. They're just really, really good.
And so is this podcast. So if you're watching with us, let us know what you think in the comments below in chat. We'd love to hear what you think. Do you think Alabama's just good? Do you think that they are poised to or set to rise and challenge for national titles under Kalen DeBoer, or do they need something else? And while you're at it, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, tell your friends. If you're already subscribed, absolutely tell your friends, share the wealth, be a friend, tell a friend. So you got any parting thoughts, Street?
Nah, man, we're going to keep doing this all off season long. We'll maybe running solo next week because I've got some personal stuff to attend to, but keep listening to the show. Leave your comments below. If you got ideas for things for us to cover, we'd love to hear from you. And other than that, hope everybody has a good Valentine's Day. And until next time, I'm Street.
I'm Burl.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.